I'm in my old bedroom at my parents' house in the south of France right now. So,
yeah, I was going to say it's a very rustic.
Yeah,
looking.
It's very, very rustic. It's all wooden, and like we built a room ourselves with my dad. It turned into a studio. It's the place where I wrote my best music ever, to be honest.
Really?
Oh yeah, a lot of magic happens in this room. Actually, I come back very often to keep writing music. It's just a peaceful place. It's a small town in the south.
It's good to see you. I feel like it's been a while since I've even seen your face.
Yeah, last time we saw each other, I think was it in San Diego like a few years ago?
I think that's right. Like maybe some after party, something like that.
But that would have been Basement otherwise.
Yeah, Basement or Spin. You remember Spin?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
But yeah, that was, I mean, at this point, man, that's got to be what, 2017?
Minimum 5-6 years ago for sure. Yeah. Yeah, you won't see me often in like parties unless I'm playing these days, to be honest. I've become quite the homebody, you know.
Dude, I'm the same way. I mean, did you used to be the guy who was out all the time? Because there was a time in my life where, like when I was in my like mid-20s, I was going out, 4 or 5 nights a week while still trying to like be a professional DJ producer and all that. But I can't do that.
When I moved to LA, I mean, I came from living in what you see here in a 1,500 people town in south of France to moving to Hollywood, like that. And I was 27 and I was like, right, I've been living at my parents, no partying, just like working. So my first year I was out pretty often. Yeah. And then I realized that I wasn't, satisfied with what the nightlife was giving me. I wanted to stay home and make music instead.
Which is so funny, man, for what we do. I feel like everyone you come to that at a certain point where it's like the reason we all started getting into this was because you go out and you have these experiences and like the music does something to you and then you understand it. But then after a while, it's like to make it and to keep replicating that experience, you almost have to like remove yourself.
Stay home.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Are you on tour right now? Is that why you're back home?
Yeah. I'm doing a Europe tour right now with like, I think it's 7 shows. And so in between, I go to my parents and everything. And then big album tour that starts in 2 weeks in the US, 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, that's a big one, right? Bunch of dates. I saw you post the flyer.
So I'm pretty good. I'm both very excited and very nervous for what's about to come. My first album coming out. It's been a very long creative process and everything. And I've shown it to literally almost nobody. So it's about to be a big surprise. And we'll see how it gets received, if it's the first time doing that. So I'm trying to be, nice with myself and let time do its thing and everything. But at the same time, I can't help but feeling nervous, right?
Yeah, of course. Well, and there was, correct me if I'm wrong, but earlier in your career, I mean, it seemed like you were more precious about what you put out in general. Like for a while, it wasn't like you were dropping 3 songs and a remix every month, that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I've always been pretty careful, and still I think there was a point during COVID where, a lot of managements went to like, oh, just put a single every month and you'll survive this, you'll be okay with it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, there was no shows to better test the music you were writing. There was no way to know if it was really, a cool song for home or something for clubs. I want to make music for clubs, And I ended up putting a lot of music that I just wasn't 100% sure of, that could have get a lot more, work and reworked and everything. So I went back to my phase of being very, very precious of what I do, very specific, picky and demanding. And I think that's also part of the French DNA,
Right.
For us, it's something that's very French, that things are either like the best thing ever or complete garbage. We don't have it in between.
Yeah, I mean, that's so interesting because I think you're right about that. And I had wanted to ask you about the French thing in general, because anytime I have a French producer on here that I'm a huge fan of, and of course I'm a huge fan of yours, like I try to figure out what that is, because I think there's such a lineage of French music producers, especially for dance music, that like it spans different genres and styles, but I think it's I always have trouble trying to figure out like what ties it all together. But through talking to a few different people, like I talked to Chami about this, and I talked to Bradinsky and a few other people. And to me, part of it is like a certain amount of respect for what's come before. Like as far as like respecting the history of the music and trying to pay homage, that sort of thing. But I don't know, man. What is it to you? Because to me, I mean, the stereotype is that like French people are cool and French music is just cooler.
Well,
like,
I think it stems from the opposite. Actually, I think I've boiled it down to a few things. I used to study language and literature when I was a student, so there's something that I've realized very early on. And I think it stems for also the language and how we behave. We are very, very critical and very conservative as well. Not at the, politic conservative term, but conservative in terms of traditions and, respect to your elders and everything. So there's a part of that, of you have to respect your culture, where you come from, who paved the way before. Very close to each other in terms of producers, but everyone is so talented that that entry ticket is going to be very, very ruthless with yourself and make good quality. But it's something in the French language that's called, I think it's called direct negative feedback.
Okay.
Or we'll have to double check on the term, but direct negative loop or
right.
And French people, it's something we use in the language that you don't really see in the English language. We are not scared of talking negatively of something, and it doesn't mean and criticizing things, and it doesn't mean that I hate this. It's like more of a way that like I want it to be better. I like it, but it's not great, but it could be better. So we're not scared of like giving each other feedback that's like, this is not it, bro. You're like, you gotta add another, you gotta go harder on that. And I feel like in the US, things are always like the best. It's amazing. It's fire and everything. You rarely send a song to a French homie and he'll be like, it's fire. It's always going to be like, okay, so this could be that. It's cool. It's okay. But wait, listen. And it's always like, it's the tough feedback. It's the brutally honest thing. And it's down to our language and it's down to our culture as well. I mean, right now we're having massive strikes in the country because they're trying to push the retirement age. So people are going to have to retire, a little older. And we're not letting that happen. We're very vocal about things, and and the way we interact with art and something as precious is very important to us, especially when it's very hard and for us to make it as a producer, as a DJ, as an artist in general, as, not just in the field of music, but everything else. It's very tough, and it's not very well received to have ambition through your art. And we're still like, I like to compare that to like, we're still jesters in the King's Arena where we do a little trick and spin, but then we go back to a poor neighborhood to die of hunger and disease, right? And this is how we should be. We need to suffer, right?
Oh, man.
And so things are like, you need to navigate through a lot of like hatred, and you need to so I think that pushes all of us to work on what we do so much that it's like unattackable, and you need to be strong-headed, and I think you bring that force into your music.
Man, that's fucking fascinating.
Some of the many reasons,
No, that's probably the best answer to that question I've ever gotten. I mean, it's for you to say that it's maybe harder for a French person to sort of get started doing art or anything kind of creative that way. Is it harder because of the level of criticism they will immediately face? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I feel like that. I feel like it's not well received to have ambition for what you do. So it's harder if you just out of nowhere and talk to your friends about, I want to be a DJ. People are going to be like, get a job. I feel like in America, you walk into a room, you're like, I want to make $1 million. And everyone's like, yeah. In France, you're like, I want to make $1 million. People are like, what about taxes? What about the others? Are you going to do something good for the environment with that money? People are always questioning, and we're always questioning each other. So in terms of the global, how you feel seen and everything, you question yourself a lot more.
That's so interesting, though, because it's interesting to me because all of the people who did make it, all of the French artists, I mean, even if we just focus on our little dance music community, it's all the best people. It's all the, it's all the coolest ones. So it's
but they're all
surprising.
strong. They're all strong up there, my guy.
For sure. It's just funny that like that doesn't over time change the mindset to be like, oh, well, it worked out for all of these legendary people. Like maybe there is something to this, you know?
Yeah. And I think there's also now when it comes to our new generation, and what I'm going to call the new generation is the French EDM new wave that started with DJ Snake.
Yeah.
With Pardon My French in general, Snake, Chami, Mala, Mercer. We at a point now we all know each other. If you're like a small, low-time producer, but you make a banger, it's going to circulate all around us, and you'll be in touch with Snake, and we all know each other top to bottom. We have group chats with like 50, 60 people of us that are in there, where, you know, the smallest to the biggest are in there, and we share, we exchange music and everything. We exchange a lot of music to each other. Hey, check out this tune, it's going to fit your set and everything. And so like I created this group chat on Twitter, the French House Mafia, and it's got everyone in there, but not just in house. You know, you have dubstep, drum and bass producers, and you have people like Snake, you have people like Mala, and you have like that one new kid that's the cousin of the other producer. Right. Your entry tickets always you need to have bangers. It's like a fight club. The rule number one is like you have to share music. Rule number two is you don't talk about the fight club. I kind of break that rule right now, but a lot of people know about it.
Just a little. No, that's cool, man. I mean, that's like what I like about that, though, is that's you guys, like the community itself, sort of breaking that cycle of criticism and gatekeeping, and you know, because it has to start somewhere. So I think it's beautiful, man. That's really nice.
Yeah, I feel like before we did that, and before that generation of like Snake, Chami, and I think those guys are from Paris, but they're from the ghetto in Paris, and they're very vocal about that. A lot of the French producers and you know, Daft Punk, Justice era came a little, I don't want to say the elite, but they came from like, you know, highest fields. They were a little more close circles. And if you were a kid like me, growing up in the south of France in a wooden little bedroom, you know, in a little town, you had no access to those people. Right. I think also social media and internet wasn't a thing like it is now, but you had no access to those people. And that probably loops back to what I was saying earlier, where like, it also forces us to make really good music even better as possible to get recognized.
Right.
You know? But we did break the pattern. I think for that, you know, again, I really give a lot of credit to the guys from Pardon My French for being so helpful, so inspiring, and so genuine to all of us, you know. And it's really hard to explain the pride of being French when we have someone like that in your team. And to know that they look after us and they'll always reply to messages and everything, it gives us a lot of pride, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. And it makes me think about when I did have Chami on here and I was talking to him, he was talking about that whole group of them that all kind of came up together with, you know, Snake and Mercer, Mala, all them. And I wondered for you, when you were kind of coming up and learning how to make music and first starting to DJ and all that, did you have any kind of group around you locally that was doing it with you, some kind of community?
I've had many groups because I've had locals and I've had, you know, bigger things. The first group I ever had was when I was a student. I was 16, 17. I started hanging out with a group of promoters. So we were throwing out drum and bass parties. So I'm talking 2006, 2010, you know, for like 4 years I was with them. We threw a lot of drum and bass parties. I was mixing a lot of dubstep and breakbeat and everything. And that was my first local group of DJs. That was great because they taught me how to DJ, and I learned the ropes of, you know, throwing out parties and everything, which I think I keep today. And it gave me a lot of respect for people that are promoting shows, you know, because I did that job for a while.
It's so hard, man. It's so hard.
While working in the kitchens at the same time, I had working construction sites, kitchens, and being a promoter and DJing on weekends. It was like, it was intense. I worked my way out.
Well, that's that pressure you were talking about too, right? It's like, yeah, sure, be a DJ, but what's your job?
Yeah. And then it wasn't until like 3 years later that I became friends with the people from Alesia that became Point later. And they were like the Paris crew. And those guys, me and Nicholas from Alesia, was now Nomac, we got really hooked to making sound design. We would talk like, we would text each other for hours talking about, wait, if this oscillator goes into this filter that goes in, we were like breaking the matrix in there. And so they brought me to Paris and they were like, we have a recording studio that we rent with homies and you should come up and do sessions with us just for fun, you know. We never made a song together, but we made a 1,000 patches, right?
Right.
And in that studio was DJ Snake, Chami, Mercer, Mala. So that's how I met them. And that's how I realized that there was this new wave, this new community that was building up. And that because I was mostly hanging out with British producers, American producers, working with British and American labels for a very long time. But I didn't feel like I had a group which resonated with my culture. I was like with the Never Say Die gang, and I was a very strong thing musically, but culturally and everything, we didn't exchange much in terms of the creativity. It was more like a touring organism and label organism. And so when I met the Frenchies, I realized that the roots, what we had was, way bigger than I ever thought, and a lot more. I finally felt like I had a little home, right?
Yeah.
And that's when I started to meet the rest of the French producers, people like Tony Romera, people like, Killed. So the two of them being Belcourt, and then all the new guys that appear later. If I start listing them all, we're not going to bed, Aztec, Bass Trick.
And every name you say, I'm like, they're great. Yep. Great. It's a lineup of killers, man.
And they were all connected, but what really, the guys that got me into it was hanging out with Alesia in Paris in this crappy old recording studio on the third floor on the ground.
I mean,
I had no money. I would come there, I had no money. I remember like one time Snake, I had just met DJ Snake, and he was like, "Oh, I'm going to Miami for 3 days. Do you want my studio?" And he gave me his studio key, and I've known him for like 2 days at this point.
Oh, wow.
And so I had his recording studio for 3 days, and I slept in the sofa, 3 floors on the ground. I ordered one day like 3 pizzas. I was like, I have a good opportunity to make them. I need to make the most of this. Right. So I bought like 3 pizzas, stacked them in the little fridge, and I slept on the sofa, and I didn't shower, I didn't brush my teeth for 3 days. It was like, eat some pizza, sleep a little bit, work nonstop. I did like, 18, 20 hour sessions a day. Right. And just slept on pizza. And then he came back from Miami. I was like, okay, here's your key. The room probably smelled like fucking. But those guys, were like, they were giving us opportunities, and they were like really eager to hear our music and hear our ideas and everything. It was that era where like trap was big, and the US was like a boiling place of all bunch of new sounds. And that's why I was, starting to feel a little interested with dubstep. And that's where I started to make my first bass house ideas when we were in the studio.
Wow.
Because those guys were all making house bangers. I was like, I make dubstep, my bass was like, but I was grooving to what they were making. So it all started to boil down together. And that was the starting point for that.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's so interesting. First of all, I think that says a lot about Snake, that he would just hand you the keys after knowing you for a couple of days. Most people would not do that.
Yeah.
So that says something right there. But talking about Never Say Die too, which, is legendary dubstep label that isn't around anymore, but was sort of a collecting point for a lot of really interesting, talented people, right? Like I think about a lot of people who are on that label. A lot of them are still around and still making incredible music. But it's funny because until you said that, I never really realized, I think you're right, that label, it was sort of like a collecting point for individuals, like it, and it was, of course, a touring brand and a whole big deal. But you're right. It's like everyone was kind of doing their own thing, and everyone sounded just like themselves. And it was just I guess the selling point of the label was like, this is just all the coolest shit.
Yeah, if we were a little isolated from each other, even though we're all great friends and we all did, a bunch of stuff together. We collabed, we remixed each other's and everything. I think we were lacking a little bit of the hanging out together, and just do
it's important.
Just do human things together and have this, sense of community. At least from my experience, it was an insane opportunity for me. And I think also to when Schism, told me like, hey, I hear good things, send me music. And then he was like, just stay with us, man. It was insane. It was like, again, coming from where I come. And back then in France, there wasn't much of a scene, but also I think it was, and something I'll probably talk about again when I talk more about the album, but I think it was the great era of labels where like you had Circus Records that had that sound. You had Never Say Die that had that sound. And you had Dub Police, and you had those.
Yeah. I mean,
that dubstep UK culture was boiling, but record labels had like, you were like part of a pack, part of a team, and part of a sound that was very specific, and like everyone wanted to be part of the label.
Oh my
right?
God. I mean, yeah, in the States, Fool's Gold, Mad Decent, Dim Mak,
Exactly.
there's a million of them.
And then Ausla took that and accumulated like from turning a label to a culture. But before that, labels were little castles, they were little strongholds of castles where they could have label nights, and everyone wanted to go to those nights, Circus Records nights, or Never Said I, it was. And so for me, it was really a crazy, crazy thing, because that helped me with guidance for my music. It's like, you can do whatever you want as long as you could see being released on Never Said I, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Which I think something back then was important, because I needed that sort of guidance, because my music was all over the place, and I liked the feeling of belonging and everything. And I wasn't seeing bigger things than that. For me, it was fine. Just make bangers, play some shows, and make sure it stick to that little family,
Right.
And I think that fitted for the era. And then I think things changed. I couldn't really tell you how, when. I think Ausla really exploded things. A lot of labels started signing a lot more people, and it became the same with management company. I think a lot of management, was once a very respected things, became powerhouses of anyone and everything was on there. And so we were kind of missing the central core of things,
Well,
and I think that's part of the explosion of the internet. That's part of the explosion of touring, of more festivals, and EDM becoming this big capitalist machine in America. And
that's
everything.
What I was about to say, man. I think the money is a big part of it. Like
money, right? It dissolved everything.
Yeah. Everyone saw the money, and a lot of people ran towards the money, and more power to them. But like, that changes the culture significantly.
Yeah. And not just that, I think also social media, what we expect from an artist to post and everything changed. And so you couldn't just rely on the label anymore to promote the song. The artist had to do a lot more job, a lot more work to, creating content, and the apparition of that word, content. Yeah. And so a lot of artists went back to like focusing more on themselves to be that promotion and that big marketing machine constantly. And that kind of separates you from the label, where the label could only do so much, a couple of posts on social medias and everything. And so I think that contributed to the crumbling, I'd say, of those entities. Not saying those entities crumble, but the trust that people have in them and how we see them as those houses. I think now we're in an era where like the attention is a lot more focused on the artist, and a lot of artists are starting to understand that. It's starting to realize that they hold so much power in their hands. And if they know how to make their own content, if they know how to diffuse it and find the right people, the right audience for that, you just have so much power that you won't even need to belong to a label, right?
Well, I mean, you mentioned this a second ago, but let's use this talking point to talk a little bit about the album for you. For this project, you're basically just doing everything yourself at this point, right?
Yeah, at this point, I'm doing everything myself. I mean, I work with, PR companies and everything, but it's on for the latest singles, it was on a per single basis. We hired this company or this company. I work with a distributor, but there's no recording labels there's no record label on the album. It's my own. It was important to me because I think it's a long story to explain, but it's also very plain simple. I was really, really burnt out with the way we put our music again. I think where with labels treating our music like content,
Yeah.
I was very burnt out with the whole, you have to make a song every month, and then you make your song, and then you make your little artwork. And then the release process, when you release a lot of music and you work with different labels, I started realizing it was always the same. And a lot of managers as well had no idea what they were doing. It became very complacent, and it kind of goes like this. It goes, you have your release date. It's a Friday. It's always a Friday.
Yeah.
On Monday, you drop the artwork or a teaser or something that's 15 seconds. You keep the song kind of hidden before that, Monday, you post your artwork. Tuesday or maybe day off. Wednesday, you post the artwork that wiggles a little bit with 15 seconds of the music.
Yeah.
First day, you say, hey, my track is out tomorrow. Friday, hey, my track is out now. You post. When comes next Monday, you're like, hey, for those who missed, my track came out last Friday. The label, in the meantime, the one that followed you on the last few days, the label is Monday. It's the next rollout for the next release. They already know
Yep.
Your tracks are already gone. And that's what I say. That's what it means when I say that a lot of recording labels treat your music like content. For them, it's disposable and it's just a thing that only exists twice. And I don't know, good music exists forever,
Yeah.
Something that's meaningful and good art that touches people, that reaches people, it's forever. It's not an emotion that just shines and disappears. And so I started to look in my head of how we look at the lifespan of a track, right? From the moment it's being made to the moment it's out to the rest of its existence in the future, which is an indefinite,
Yeah.
So I mostly started to focus into the creating point to the release point. And I was like, if that was a curve, where is the highest point? And a lot of us see the highest point as the release, right? And until that, you kind of keep things flat.
Right.
Because you don't want it to be too overheard and everything. And I was like, what if I break the pattern? What if I post this song that's not out so much that people are absolutely fed up with it? To the point that when I finally put it up, people are like, oh, cool, it's out. Hey, I've heard it 1,000 times. But what if the second the song was being created and I'm hyped about it and I love it and I think it's great with my own small subjective opinion, but I think it's a good piece of music. What if I start to promote the shit out of it? If I posted a minute of it online instead of just being so precious about it. And so a craze had sent me a stamps for Do It To It. And actually, I did that with Do It To It second. The first time I did that with the Ring the Alarm remix for Mala and Chami. Chami and, Mala and DJ Snake, Ring the Alarm.
Right.
But I did the same thing on both Do It To It and Ring the Alarm remix, which is I made the remix without really knowing if there was going to be a release at all, without a release date. And I started to tease the shit out of it. And I started to play it out, post videos of it. And I started to make, TikToks with it. I started to make Instagram with it. I started to play it out on stories all the time. I gave it to a lot of DJs. And so I kind of treated this is the climax moment. And it's not going to be a point that goes down. It's going to be a all-time high. And I completely disregard the whole release process and who's going to sign it and how we're going to market it and how we're going to do the release promo plan. Those words give me a rash, And I started to just be let the music live, define the world in which the music is supposed to live. And to me, that world was the clubs. That world was, social medias and parties, but also the clubs. And so I was not shy about, posting about it all the time. And when it finally came out, it was I remember this one article was saying, Habstrakt finally releases his highly anticipated remix for DJ Snake and Mala.
Right.
I was like, I have never heard that, but my music is highly anticipated. It's always, his new song. And they all find different adjectives to say that the bass has a breakbeat drums that drops into a punchy house beat with a bass.
Dude, it's my lead. I make fun of the writers so much. It's
right.
Yeah.
And so,
sorry, right?
When I saw that his highly anticipated remix, I was like, wow, that's exactly what that's my point. It's we didn't create it. And if I had to rely on the label to create this anticipation, I know that wouldn't have happened, right?
Yeah.
And so I went back and I said to myself, and this came on labels and, Do It To It remix. After that, I did the same thing. I posted a couple of TikToks on that. Actually, TikToks at the end were the comments were just release the thing already. Come on, yeah. And then when it came out, the same guys that were begging me, the same accounts I compared, and I think they came back a little too late now,
right,
no, bro, you were begging me for it, you were having nightmares about it. I saw people begging me for it, ripping it, and even remaking their own versions of it,
of course,
so they could play it. It was crazy, those came out on labels and everything, and then the next step was to tell myself, wait a second, am I really giving 50% of the royalties and the money and the rights, not just money, but the rights of something that I created that I believed in harder than anybody else? Am I really giving 50% of that to a bunch of people in an office that I haven't even met in person, that made 3 Instagram posts for life? And I was like, wait, what's going on here? And I started to realize this is why I'm burnt out, and this is why I'm kind of losing interest in what I'm doing, is because I just feel like I'm feeding the machine, and my art is treated as content, and the emotions and how I believe in this piece and everything is being put at the background, and do I need that? Do I really want to keep going like that? And if I keep going like that, how long is that going to be sustainable before I really feel that I'm burnt out and I don't ever want to make music from my heart ever again? I just start making music because I have to. And the moment I start to make music because I have to, I'll quit. Yeah. It's just like that. There was no other way for me. And so we all like snowballed until, I started to tell my manager, and I was like, I want to make an EP. And I was on the phone with him. And I had about 6 tracks. It was last summer. And I said, okay, EP 4 tracks, but like, I'd love to like sneak all the stuff because I make a lot of really various music, but when you release singles, it all has to be bangers, 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 right?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I want to like kind of shift that. I want to release some weird stuff. And then we was like, okay, let's make an EP with 6 tracks, but 2 of them are a little weird. And I was like, yeah, but... And then I was like, okay, fuck, we're making an album. And I remember the 15 seconds of silence that he had before he just went, let's fucking go. and that was the rule. He was like, I'm going to make an album. I'm going to do whatever I want. No one is going to tell me what to do. You will not, I told my manager, you will not tell me anything about how I'm supposed to do it. Like you will not, not even breathe a whisper of creative direction towards me. Right. I'll let you know when it's done. Then he was like, okay, here's the deadline. I was like, okay, I'll try to make it.
Yeah.
That was as much as he, intervened on that. But I was like, no label is going to tell me what to do. No one's going to tell me what to do. And I'm going to like fully kind of show the extent of what I actually do and all the sorts of music that I make, and that includes, a lot of ambient stuff, a lot of house cuts that are a little chiller, that are a little more melodic and everything. And some pretty gnarly and dark music as well, And so the whole creative process came together like that. At the same time, it was a very long summer. Europe was having a lot of problems with flights, so I was touring in Europe, and it was a very stressful summer. A lot of canceled flights, canceled shows, rerouting, no sleep, late shows, like I was, and then I was exhausted. And I came back home in September thinking, okay, I have to finish this album by the end of the year. And then I kept touring, I kept touring. And I was so burnt out, dude. I was just at the end. And I'm really proud of myself for managing successfully to finish the album and make, 15 records on this. And so I made like almost 10 records in the last, 6 months of the last year.
Yeah.
And then getting it all together was a challenge, but it was also like, it's the most intense and inspiring and rewarding process I've ever been a part of. And it all came from moving myself. And I think, again, this no label approach was very terrifying at times, but very empowering at the rest. Because like, should I make this? Should I make that? And I was like, no, I make whatever I want. I'll decide later, right. And people will decide for me. As long as it's meaningful for me, who cares about the codes on this? And because no one's here in an office be like, oh yeah, this is great. Could you change the drums on this song? And could this one have maybe a commercial vocal? No one's going to tell me that.
Right. Which is how it all started, right? Like when you started making music, it's sort of the similar thing, right? Not that you knew it at the time, but when you start making music, that to me is the discovery and the freedom of it is the most fun part. It's like once you figure out a little bit what you're doing and you realize, oh, this is how I put a drum pattern together and this is how I program a synth and all that, you start to realize like exactly what you said. Oh, I could make anything. And then, all that energy you had stored up, all the excitement, the shit that got you into it, all of that, you can sort of unleash it. And I don't know, man. I mean, I talk to a lot of people on this show about this idea that, especially for artists who have been doing this for a while, at a certain point, everybody tries to figure out how to get back to where they started. It's such a funny thing.
The burnout is real, and it's really hard. I'm not shy about saying it. It's really hard to keep the passion alive for something when your passion is tied to your financial income. And when you have the stress of that, especially in an industry, it's called the music industry, not the music summer camp. Yeah. You have to always have growth. You need to always be growing. You need to make bigger songs, play bigger shows, put bigger money. You have to have more likes on every post. It's like, it's growth. And so that pressure it's really hard to reconcile pressure and stress and responsibility with passion and, catching butterflies in your garden, because that's what making tune is. It's like we're chasing butterfly here. You're always outside your little net. Some days it's raining and there's no butterfly. You're still going to be standing in the rain with your net trying to catch the butterflies that are not here. You know they're not here, but you're still out there hunting. And that's what it is. And so reconcile those two energies is really, really tough. And again, I had really hit the breaking point, coming out of COVID and getting back into touring, realizing that like I'm at my breaking point, in terms of like I don't think I love opening Ableton and making a song anymore.
Yeah,
really, I was just like, this is really tough for me, and it's also bland. It's like, okay, open your drum kit, drag a kick drum, open your slice, look for the loop, and you click, 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 click. The list of samples in your brain just being like that. I had reached a point where like I've been making this, electronic music since I'm 13 years old. I'm 33 right now. So I had to reach a point. There's no denying. And one thing that really, really kept it alive for me was the use of external gear and hardware synth, especially modular synthesizers.
Yeah, when did you start doing that?
Modular, hardware synthesizer kind of always, because as a kid I couldn't afford a computer, so I started using groove boxes.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Interesting.
So I would make my song on groove boxes. I would record them on a tape cassette recorder. That's still here. I'm looking at it right now.
That's incredible.
Big old chunky thing with cassette, and I started doing that. The first computer that I had was an Atari that I found in a trash can that would run just a tracker and send me beats to send my groove boxes. It was just a big clock play button to just synchronize all my machines. And so I've always been kind of into groove boxes. Then came, my first laptop. I dived really deep into Ableton. Then I went really into synthesizers like big analog, Moog, and all that stuff. And what was missing for me was actually the groove and the groove box. And it's called a groove box because what you're doing is you jam.
Right.
You play music, and it's something we don't really get to do as musicians, especially when you're a producer on Ableton. You don't play music the way a guitar is going to grab his guitar, play in his bed, and then put the guitar away. And what he just did was just vibrations floating into the air and disappearing. Nothing was recorded. Some notes were completely wrong, a lot of trial and error. You go back to that bar, you try those chords together. And I was like, I used to play guitar as a kid and I would just jam endlessly and I never recorded a note of it. But every music that I make in the electronic music world is recorded and it's on a system that I press play and re-listen to it and endlessly. And so that was very early on. I realized that as I switched from Groovebox to laptop when I was 17, 18, I was going to miss that kind of, having fun side of things. So I went back to acquiring some gear, better gear when I was older. And when I moved to America in 2017, I had enough money to get my first, rack of modules. I had some modules before, but in a shitty little case and everything. It was very DIY. When I got to LA in 2017, I had finally enough to, my whole dream the whole time since I was a kid was a modular synthesizer. Actually, my neighbor across here built one in like the 70s or 80s. He showed it to me. It's like a plank of wood with like whatever component he could find, back then when the resistors were this big before they became,
right.
And so it's like chunky and he has some like the crocodile plier thing to make contacts and everything. But I remember seeing this thing. It was like, wow, because I was always into circuit bending, opening something, unplugging, soldering something and see if I could change this knob.
Figure out how it works.
I did circuit bending for tape recorders, for old synthesizers and everything. I always modded things. And so modular was always on my mind, but it was a quite expensive hobby. And I started in 2017 acquiring, a lot of equipment. And I went on like that for a few years with just, a couple of rows of equipment that I would just like sometimes make a little blip bloop on it. And it wasn't until last year when I really started the creative process for the album that I realized that, again, sitting on Ableton, especially when now it's not just, you have to make your next single, you have to make an album now. You have to make the thing that when you're going to be dead, this thing will be, will still be there with your name on it. Like, shame on you if it's bad. I was like, and so you open Ableton and you're just scrolling for kick drums. And you're like, is this album material? And I was like, wow, this is not going to work. And so the next step in my big dream of modular synthesizer was to have a machine that's not just a big synthesizer that you can patch and repatch and everything, was to have a groove box. What I had as a kid was to have a machine with sequences in there where I could sequence the drums, where I could have a sampler to play samples, where I could have several voices of synth, where I could have effect like reverb and delay and everything. And so I went back into doing a lot of research about that. And with enough time and, by reselling most of my equipment to afford this and by using most of my savings and my touring money, it was a lot. But I finally built a machine that's now a big jam machine, a big groovebox machine. And so the idea was that I would start IDs on this. My computer was closed and I'm just sequencing a beat and I'm typing a couple of melodies. And the thing that I really love about modular synth is that you have things like probability and like random voltages where you can kind of create a set of rules where like you're going to play music in this scale from this note to this note, but you're going to randomize it at this speed or at this interval and everything. And so you had a lot of things that were like very funny to do and that would create very musical results without me having, because I can't read a score, I can't make chords, I'm not very music literate. I just know what sounds good in my heart and my ears, but I can't, I can play guitar, but that's about it. I don't really have any knowledge. And so I felt very illiterate. And modular for me was a way to, this machine allows me to have self-generated melodies with variations and a lot of harmonies possible suddenly. And you can create polyrhythms and Euclidean patterns and everything. And I was able to like use more my math brain because I'm more of a math brain than a music brain sometimes in my approach, very pragmatic and a lot of logic,
Yeah, more of an engineer's brain, yeah.
Yeah. So I was able to use that in a way that was fun again, when I was like jamming on it. I could make a house beat, I could make a thick bass line, and if it was not like a song, but it was a spark. What I call a spark is something that's like, wow, if I had that in Ableton now.
Right.
If I take that bass and added those VSTs that I know, if I take that beat and start compressing it with my stuff over there. And I think, so the idea was to have a little funny wiggle machine, but I was still serious and could still create like very interesting stuff that I could then record. And now the way I have it set up is that I use an ADAT, which is, an external sound card, plugged into my Apollo Twin optical. And I'm able to tap the signal wherever I want. So I can take a cable and just patch out of like my melody before the sidechain, before the reverb. I can take my drums, like just the kick, the snare, and everything. And I tap all those signals and I send them. And so now I'm jamming. And when I'm ready, I have Ableton at the back with a template. I press record and it records stems. And so my jam that's on my modular, that's no computer involved, is still being recorded as like 8, 12 stems. And I save the MIDI as well. And at the end, I have those jams that are like 5, 10, 20 minutes long. And I go back to those and I cut what's important and I make little loops. And then I start building a song out of that. Then the modular gets off, the computer gets on. And now I start, scheduling. But it's like remixing yourself.
Of course, yeah, and it's maybe one of the more direct ways to sort of capture that lightning in a bottle kind of moment, right? Because there's so many times where I think anyone who likes music knows that moment of you just hear a couple seconds of something and it gives you that feeling, that jolt, makes your hair stand up, whatever it is. But when you're creating, that's so hard to capture. And so what I like about what you're talking about, and I think this for anyone listening, that's a good lesson, is like the idea of sort of jamming and not immediately stopping the flow when you get that little jolt, but just letting it happen, knowing it's there, being able to come back to it and continuing the jam, continuing to explore all of that. I mean, I think that is a very good tip and a very good way to go about it. I mean, I think it's also a good explanation of part of what makes what you do unique and why your music sounds like you. You know what I mean? Because I was trying to think about that before we got on here to talk, was like, I think your music is very identifiable as you, but then I was having trouble of like defining what that is and why that is, because I think it is. It's partially the analog thing, like it's the textures and the patterns, right, and the drums and all that analog gear generates that just sounds different and hits different than digital. But I think it's also, I don't know if you agree with me, but I knew that you used to play guitar, and to me, in like metal bands and rock bands, guitarists, lead guitarists, like the really good ones, you'd call them like riff monsters. It's just like these guitarists that could just endlessly generate these short, catchy little riffs. I sort of feel like you're a riff monster that way too.
Yeah. I think I was a terrible guitar player, to be honest. I can't really do solos and everything, but I could find a good riff.
Yeah.
And it's going to sound cheesy, but hear me out. The greatest song when I was playing guitar, the greatest song for me that blew my mind was the White Stripes 7 Nation Army. I mean, that riff,
perfect.
That riff showed me that you could do the greatest things even if you completely musically illiterate. Which for me, I studied music in university, and I was with kids. We had, notation lessons where she plays 2 notes and you need to write them on a music score.
I did the same thing.
Everyone. I was with like absolute geniuses that could recognize every note, that had perfect hearing, pitch perfect hearing. And me, I failed every class. I was like, how do you do that? It was really hard on me when I was from 18 to my 20 at university, being in school with people that had such genius. And then I started realizing none of them is ever going to play a show, though. That's kind of weird, right? They're all going to be music teachers. What's going on here? So I was a big punk and grunge fan. Nirvana was my, Nirvana were my gods, because the riffs are always super simple but super catchy, and it's the simplicity, complexity into simplicity, and it's the less is more while also being so much at the same time that it's not really less, it's all the energy you can get, but out of very simple things. And so, the White Stripes came out with that songs, and I hear it and I'm like, wow. And then I realize it's even more simple. He has a bass pedal, so he can turn his guitar into a bass to make it lower. That he goes back to guitar and plays the same thing. It's the most simplest song to learn, but that was a big moment as a kid where I realized that like my inability to learn, because music's a language, right? And my inability to learn, because I tried again and again and to learn music, to learn how to do those scores and chords. I wanted to play the piano. I wanted to I understand all that. And I couldn't, and I was really frustrated with myself. And then I turned that inability into a force. And so I took back those guitar moments that I brought back into monophonic synthesizers, where I have this big monster of a synth, and it's monophonic. You can't play 2 notes at once. So you can only focus on a solid, good melody and something that loops. And at the same time, the discovery of electronic music that's loop-based. And so you have to have excellent loops with some variation if you want. But yes, I think that was a big, big moment for me, was the riff. And it's confirmed, because nothing's crazier for me than playing a show. And you see that when I play stuff in France and everything. France are very good for that. Like, people are singing like pa 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 pa, like they sing the melodies of my songs,
Which is the same thing they do for 7 Nation Army, by the way.
Yeah. And it's the thing you see with singers and bands and rappers, where like they shut the music and the whole crowd goes, la, 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 la. They know the lyrics. And it was like, I had achieved this kind of recognizable and easy to memorize level that someone can sing it back. And it was crazy for me. I was like, wow, this is my force, this is my power. And I just have to, doesn't matter what I make, what genre, and if it doesn't have to all be in the same lane of bass house, but as long as people can whistle the melody and remember it in an easy way, as long as it finds its way into an earworm type stuff, it was all okay. And then, I worked when I worked with Skrillex on Chicken Soup, he took that knowledge that I had and that thing, and he helped me develop that to such a higher level. Because I think Chicken Soup had 4 notes, and Skrillex was like, no, a good song is 3 notes, not 4. And I was like, wait a second. And then he showed me a bunch of examples. And sometimes it's 3 notes, sometimes it's 3 chords.
Right.
But I was always in that number 4. You need 4 notes, the conclusion and everything. And then I realized so many great pop songs had only 3 chords, and many great records had only 3 notes, And octaves are a good way to cheat that, But Chicken Soup had 3 notes.
I mean, dude, think about that. And that was not that there's been plenty of catchy short riffs in dance music before that. But I do feel like Chicken Soup was such a moment for the riff song kind of coming back and becoming dominant. Like when did Chicken Soup come out? That was
May 2017.
2017. So now, what, 6 years ago, or 5.5, something like that. And it's still the dominant like form, like the Chicken Soup form of that sort of like drop out riff, change up 2 bars later to something groovy, or go back to the riff. I feel like that's still most of bass
the
house.
Fake drop. Yeah, the fake drop and the 3 notes, very stupid riffs. Yeah, I do. I hate to take credit for it, but I think like we opened a bit of a new bridge when we did that, you know. And I think none of us expected it. None of us expected it, because I remember very clearly sessions with him. We both looked at each other. We were like, I don't know if this is complete garbage or the absolute future. It's absolutely not somewhere in between. This is either complete trash or the fucking future, and I don't know. I can't tell. And then I realized that it was like. It was in the way that it was, how do you call that? Unapologetically, unconditionally punk.
Yeah.
It was a punk song, and something we discussed, you know, it was like, this is a punk record. It's not a bass house. It's a fucking punk record, the approach of it. It's complete nonsensical. The production's complete garbage, but it has a soul to it, and it makes you want to riot, and it makes you want to party.
That's what it is.
And it makes you want to question the system. And to us, the system was like, every song is so formatted and so similar. And how do we go against that? It changed a lot. It changed a lot for me, I think, more than anyone else, because, I got very lucky to first have the pleasure of, spending time in studio with Skrillex, and I learned so much. And it's been, the most inspiring and the most generous and the most pure form of advice that I've had in my life ever. And those moments, I cherish them forever. I get very emotional thinking about how much he did for me without even realizing that he was doing it, because he's such a genuine and gentle person, right?
Best. Yeah.
So from the creative process to everything that happened after that, and how this song went viral, right?
Beyond viral, I mean,
and how much I learned from something that I did myself, which is I think very important, is you have to, you learn from. We always say, you learn from your mistakes, but this was not a mistake. This was, this was a success. We don't say enough. You got to learn from your success as well, my guy.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah, and like the trusting yourself, you do have to sort of lean into that. Like we all know that we're supposed to trust ourselves and go with your gut and do what feels good and all that. But there's sort of a level beyond that where, you kind of almost have to have that like delusional confidence of like, this is cool.
Absolutely.
And the only reason it's cool is because I like it.
Absolutely. But then comes something also pretty kind of terrible, which is weird. And I discovered the curse of having a hit record.
Right.
Because when you sit in the studio after that, what do you do? And he was like, shit, do I make this exact same one but different? Do I make something completely different? The curse of having a hit record, it's terrible. The bigger your song goes, the more terrified you are to sit in the studio after that and make another one. At least for me, it was like that. It was like kind of for a while, I was like, and you work with one of the biggest geniuses in the music industry. He makes it look so damn easy.
Right.
He makes it look so damn easy. There was moments where like he was working on something. I see him, he opens Ableton, drops a kick drum. I'm like, I have a phone call. I go outside for a phone call. I come back 20 minutes later. He had a full song.
Yeah.
That was 6 years ago. I can still remember the song to this day.
Oh, man.
He made it look like that guy's, the level of talent.
Insane.
And that makes you, when you see that a couple of times, you're like, oh, it's actually that's that easy.
Yeah, I'll just do this every time.
Do it. No, it doesn't work like that. And I've hurt myself really bad after that. Being like, I am not a genius. I may be smart, maybe, but I'm not there. And so after making that song, I had a bit of a block where I was both very excited about what would come next, and I would sometimes at times get very nervous and lost and everything. And then that's, when I had to put myself back together, it was like, it's very easy. You just have your little set of rules and you don't follow the book unless it's the book that you wrote for yourself,
Right.
Fuck the rest of the rules. And that was a big defining moment for that, was when I managed to overcome those kind of 6 months of writer's block that I had after that. And then when I was like, wow, I felt strong, I felt inspired and strong because everything was possible as long as it fell by those few criteria that I had set. The rest was like open season, do whatever you want.
Wait, what were those few criteria?
I think the punk mentality, the punk approach, the very unconditional and very like, kind of screechy, screamy, and
if you're worried that it's too annoying, make it more annoying than that.
And stop being so anal about mix downs. Kind of trust to recognize when something has its own soul and its sound and exists like that. And so ever since that, I haven't really mixed down my records the same way. I've learned to give up on it a lot earlier. And it was like, this is satisfying to me and it's got its soul and everything. But I also recognize when, like, if I keep going on just the technical and mix down the way, I'm going to ruin the song. I'm going to mix the vibe out of something. So I kind of stopped mixing my records from that point in the same way that I used before. That was very academic.
Right.
And now it was more like, if it sounds good to me, to my soul, if I play it in a club and everyone goes bonkers, good. And I kind of changed my standards, right? And I think that helped actually make my music sound better and more unique because it became more personal. I stopped comparing my music to other people, which I think is a terrible, terrible problem in dubstep right now, where everyone is sounding the absolute same, and you just cannot tell who's who unless you're like very, very, very trained in music production. But like, talk about treating your music like content, right?
Oh, man,
it's like, you're not making, dance floor paste. You're making art here. What is your vision? What is your message you're trying to send across? And, if you spend 20 hours trying to polish this mix down, is it like creating something, or is it just trying to match, try to fit an industry and a system and a box and a mold and everything? And I think the more I try to fight that and steer away from fitting inside of the mold and everything, the better I was at making music and the happier I was with my music. And at the same time, you get sent a lot of demos that you can tell have been, you probably inspired those people to make their music, but they're using that mentality of the mix downs and there's no vibes and stuff.
Right.
And so I was like, I started to realize that I think what makes my music so unique is that it's dirty, but it's clean dirty. Do you know what I mean? It has, there's a sense of clean up and clean in the carnage, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, man. There's one, this is a total tangent, but I just want to mention it because I wanted to tell you to your face, because I feel like this song you did doesn't get enough love, is the remix you did for Hero Bust, the Vertebraker remix.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things you've ever done, and I'll tell you why. It's because you did almost the opposite of what you're just talking about, because the original Hero Bus tune is that sort of like dirty, clean thing, whereas these insane synths, it's so distorted and wild, but it's also, the mix is super clean because he's a great engineer, all of that. And the the remix you did for that took it the other way, where you made it this like smooth, sexy kind of song with still those crazy, dirty synths. I don't have a point here other than to tell you I have always loved that remix, and you just made me think of it, and that's one of my favorite
crazy.
tunes.
Sometimes I love hearing about one of my songs and realize that I completely forgot about it, and this is one of those. I should probably put that back into my set because that was really cool. I remember I used a sound that I recorded in my studio as just two like a wooden box and it's on lead, toc, and that was the snare.
Oh, nice.
That's the snare. It's just a piece of wood that I recorded, and I used another trick that we used in Chicken Soup on that, which is that the snare is 6 dB higher than the rest of the mix. So if you export the song without a limiter, the waveform is like that, and you have a snare that's like
pops out.
But when you clip everything together, it goes consistent. And that one's very punk in the approach. The lead bass, I know for a fact that it's a sine wave, just a bunch of distortion.
Yeah, it's just like a rumble. It's great, man. There's something about it.
Yeah.
But
thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, so I want to make sure I ask you some of the early stuff too, because we're talking about like the punk stuff. We talked about you played some guitar early on. What was, and obviously for people who don't know, I mean, you started off making dubstep. So what even got you like turned on to electronic music in the first place? Like, do you remember the first time or the first couple times you heard electronic music?
Electronic music on itself, yeah, absolutely. Because like I said, I was very, grunge punk and everything, very playing guitar, distortion in my room and everything. And had those friends. I was pretty lonely in my village, and I met this group of kids that were partying a lot. They were just always having this guy's house. So this guy's house, the parents were very cool. So they could on the weekend get together, drink and smoke and everything.
Yeah.
I was in France, so, underage drinking is
you guys
legal.
started drinking at what, like
it's sort of legal,
6, 7?
Christian. Yeah. I was smoking weed when I was 12, it was and so I was 13 years old and I was at this party. And this kid had a CD player and a little mixer, and they were playing Chemical Brothers and Prodigy. And that was when I heard Outer Space from Prodigy.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. And my brain did a 360 that day, 360. Because I was guitar player, my other best friend was a bass player, and my other best friend was a drum player. So we were 3 kids, 3 loners in 3 different villages, 5 miles from each other as a triangle. And we wanted to have a band, but I wanted to do Nirvana. The drummer wanted to do jazz, and the bass guy wanted to do more Deftones, Rage Against the Machines, and so couldn't get along. We tried, couldn't get along, so we didn't have a band. And then I'm like, wow, this is fucking fire! And then I discovered Aphex Twin. The same dude that night showed me Aphex Twin and showed me Amon Tobin and the Chemical Brothers. So in one night, I found out about electronic music, and I discovered Aphex Twin, which was
yeah.
And I was like, wow, this band is crazy. He's like, no, it's just one guy. I was like, how do you make this as one person? Because there's drums and everything. And, I came home and it was the early days of internet. And God, I wish I was smarter back then and I would know to Google stuff better, because I just had no idea where to start,
Right.
So for me, my first machine was the MC303, it was a Roland Groovebox that had some jungle sounds on them and everything. A pain in the ass to sequence, but I discovered, electronic music with that, and listening to a lot of them. Suddenly, Prodigy was just blew my mind out of
dude. I mean, for me, the Experience album from Prodigy is one of my top 5 all-time albums.
Yeah.
Like that. There's something in that album, because I think their later albums are the ones people look to as the peak Prodigy. But for me, man, Experience just encapsulates everything that got me into dance music.
Yeah. And I had a toe in electronic music before without knowing it, from my sister that got me into Massive Attack, Portishead, Mokiba, the trip hop, era. But they were all bands, and for me, bands are bands. And I was just what I thought I was just guitars and bass with a lot of effects on it, and I didn't realize the idea of a sequencer for me was very, very new. And so I buy, when I'm 13 years old, this MC303 Groovebox, which is a piece of crap. I still have one here, and it's crazy, man. Even with my knowledge right now to program this, I'm like,
but what's kind of cool,
to type a drum beat in,
Yeah, but what's kind of cool about it, man, is I think the way you started off making dance music is the way that the originators started off making it, right? With shit that
that's what I found.
And I don't know, I feel like that probably, not that was your intention at the time, but that probably goes into what makes your sound interesting and unique now, is there's something to that. You did it the same way the people who started doing it did it. It's
exactly
the most primitive tools, limited knowledge. They didn't have Google. You didn't know how to use Google,
Yeah. I didn't speak English as well, so I had to rely on the French music community online. I've only been speaking proper English the last 10 years. Before that, it was complete darkness.
That's crazy. Your English is so good.
Thanks, man. But because I worked my ass off to get there,
What did you do? Did you take lessons?
I just watched a lot of movies, and moving to London was very good, because you have to learn very quick, when you live in a country. I lived in London in 2013 for 6 months, and that was the best English lesson you could have. And then moving to America in 2017 really helped me with the accent and the vocabulary and perfecting everything. But back then, the music forums online were just, a bunch of hardcore techno, speedcore French DJs that were not the nicest people online, so to ask for advice from people was very tough. And then you had that world of, Daft Punk, Justice, and everything that were very closed.
Yeah.
And there was never a picture of them in the studio. You couldn't zoom in on the picture to see the equipment. You had to sort of guess everything, And so, yeah, I got sort of lucky that I made myself a little fleet of machines of little sequencer, groove boxes, drum machines, and synthesizers. And then I started working when I was 16 in restaurants to finance, this whole thing and acquiring stuff. And I got my first MacBook when I was 17. And that was the beginning of Ableton.
Right.
Because before that, we had a computer, but it was the family computer downstairs. I had a 1 hour that I was allowed to use it, and it was my older sister, then it was my older sister. Everyone's on a timer, And at first, I was just need to chat with my friends on AOL and MSN and everything. And then very quickly it became just Googling stuff. I had a list of things to Google, like how to make a bass. I would print pages, and I would go back to my bedroom, and I was like, okay, can I make this happen?
That's so funny. And, that reminds me of when DJ Snake gave you the keys for a couple of days and you're like, this is all the time I got. I got to do everything.
Time crunch. Yeah. Time crunch. You have to make it. You have to make it worth it.
Yeah.
And so I had already been messing with some software like SoundForge, Acid Pro, and everything when I was 13, 14, 15. But when I got Ableton at 17, I had a computer that could operate Ableton. My family computer could not. That was a big thing. Yeah.
So what was it? Was music always the thing? Was it just something that always called to you even when you were a kid? Was it always something you knew you needed to end up doing? Or did the transition to being able to do it as a career sort of happen later on?
To be honest, I don't think I wanted to make a career out of it until it became my career. Coming from a poor family, a poor background. I'm not going to say poor, but we were the lowest of the middle class. We had, when I was a kid, sometimes we barely had enough to get by, in a big family in a small town. I didn't have ambition as I'm going to become a DJ.
Right.
It was work, make enough money to pay for your studies or make enough money to pay for your rent. And so I started working in restaurants, like I said. And I started paying my rent with that. I was a student. I was doing small jobs, constructions and everything. Music was always a hobby for me, a passion. I always loved music. When I was 5 or 6, my dad put a guitar in my hands and taught me guitar. 2 of my sisters played the piano. There's always been a piano in my house. There's always been 15 guitars. My dad's very huge on, DIY and almost a bit of a hoarder sometimes of equipment and stuff. So there's a lot of old speakers and record players and tape recorders, and there was a lot of little blips and bloops I could experiment with,
Was your dad a musician?
Yeah, guitar player. Yeah. He's a carpenter, art, and he makes, pretty fine wood stuff, and he knows electronics very well as well.
I wonder if that's where some of your interest in sort of taking stuff apart and seeing how it works. And
absolutely, 100%. But so, that was a passion for me. I never really thought it was a financial, side to it. And even when I was a promoter, as a student I talked to earlier, with book DJs, and I played shows on my own, but beside making $50 to $100 a show, I never really thought of that, and it wasn't until I was 21 and I was working in a restaurant. It wasn't really until I really started Habstrakt, to be honest, and had a name for me and everything, and I started to put music on British labels. Suddenly got picked up by BBC, and suddenly a lot of people want to see me play shows, and I've started playing a lot of little small student shows all across France. And I went to the UK and I went to Spain, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. But then suddenly I went to my boss one day and I said, hey, I can't be there Saturday or Sunday because I'm traveling for something. Can I have a day off? And she gave me the day off. She was not happy about it. And the week after that, I needed to do that again. And the week after that, I realized I need to quit my job if I want to make this. But then I realized, damn, I'm doing 2 shows a weekend, even if it's $100. Back then, my rent was $200,
Yeah.
Life was cheap. I was living in a small town in Montpellier, had very little needs. So I was like, damn, if I could just actually. And then I realized if I push on Facebook even more, if I promote my music, if I make people are finding out about it. And then they started book me to play more shows, and I was like, I could maybe make a living of that, and then I did that. And I started the company to make things official. In France, you need to be very disciplined with paperwork,
Right.
And so I started to find people that would help me with that, and everything slowly made my way. But it sort of became an accident. It's because I had to quit my job I was assistant chef at the Galerie Lafayette restaurant, in a restaurant. I was just basically I was cleaning the dishes.
Right.
I cleaned the dishes for years,
I've done it too, man. I know how that goes. Yeah.
I would, AirPods in and just clean dishes for hours, listening to music, dreaming of just going home and staying up all night making music. And I was happy like that, but it wasn't until I had to quit that job that I realized that, one, I could make a living off music, and two, it's kind of like the more you give, the more you get back. It's like if I put so many crazy hours, I'll have better music. If I work on my show, I'll have a better show that people will talk about. And again, the very early days of SoundCloud, of Facebook, the end of MySpace era, things were starting to take a shape that was more global, and there was a scene, But it was an accident, and I think to this day, if that didn't happen, if I was still working in restaurants and everything, I'd be probably very happy. And I think when I was in my very burnt out last year, and the years before, sometime it happens, I still think of that era, and I'm like, wouldn't I have been more happy if I had something that's more repetitive and predictable? I was making good money. I was, had a good situation.
Yep.
I actually really love manual labor. Construction sites with my dad, or kitchens and everything. I had something about working under very huge amounts of stress, but with your hands, when it's not public interface based, you're just on your own with a small crew of workers, and going home at the end of a long day of labor and taking a shower and having a little beer and a cigarette on your terrace. And I was like, wow, that was a long day. I'm happy to be home. I kind of like that, it taught me a lot of really hard things. It taught me that, unless you're born with it, nothing comes for free, and I was definitely not born with it. I had to work really hard for everything that I have, everything that I own. I mean, I think it gave me a good work ethics,
Yeah, no, of course, man. And I think teaching you the lesson of being able to be happy and satisfied with very little, and sort of realizing that happiness and satisfaction doesn't always come with sort of what I guess is the more American ideal of you have to achieve the most, you have to get to the highest peak, you have to always be outdoing yourself and outdoing other people, and everything has to keep growing and getting bigger. That's the myth of happiness in America, I think. Yeah. And especially for what we do too. I don't know. I'm sure you've grappled with this. I certainly have. The longer I stay in this business, is I'm still ambitious. We're all ambitious, and I still have things I want to do I haven't done yet. But yeah, it's become much more for me about what is going to make me happy doing those things, and what isn't. I think
I went through phases of that. I wasn't familiar with the concept of the American dream, the ambition, until I started to go to America, which was 2015. I'd never been to America before 2015.
Wait, what was before we get there, what was the first time you went to the States? What was that like? What do you remember?
2015 was a tour with Never Say Die, so with Megalodon, Schism, Lax, Must Die. And it blew my mind, it blew my mind because I was like, wow, there's a platform here that is so huge for what we do for electronic music. There's so many cities with so many venues and so many people are into this, and they got the shit together. No one's questioning anything. Be the French mentality I was talking about, where things are hard. Things were easy here. Everyone was like, fuck yeah, fuck yeah. It was optimistic. Everyone's and everything.
Just stoked, yeah.
It was, everyone was so stoked. And I was like, wow, this is great, But before that, I was operating out of sheer luck. AKA, I put music out, I play shows, I make enough to make a small living. I'm happy, And if it fails tomorrow, if it stops, I'll go back to working what I was working before, and I'll be happy as well. Then I get to America and I see how big this is here, and that inspired me, and that was like, wow, and everything. And again, 2015, and then you spend a lot of years in this. You go even bigger. Like I said, Chicken Soup happened in 2017. A lot of touring, a lot of more responsibility, a lot more financial responsibilities and everything.
Yeah.
And now I'm back to what you said, where I have enough and I've done enough, that I know myself enough to know that what needs to be done is making myself happy and proud of myself before anything else. And if I go back to making less money because of this, it's fine. It's completely fine, because I'm happy and I'm feeling good and everything. I definitely feel at first, when I was exposed to the American hyper-capitalistic, industry, at first it was a big woo, and then it kind of sucked me alive, And so I've extracted myself out of the claws of this. And, I honestly can't imagine being a new act right now. If I was a new kid right now trying to make music, trying to break into the world of electronic music, I don't think I would want to do that.
I think about that too.
You're right. You look at social media. You look at how you have to make TikToks, you have to make Instagram, you have to tweet 5 times a day. You have to, don't forget your YouTube channel, your content. Hey guys, welcome back to and you have to do your Facebook Live, and you have to, you know what I mean? It's like you have to find a label for your new song, but your new song needs to be -6 LUFS, and like if you're a new producer right now, the amount of work and mental strength it takes to get there. For me, it's more like I was a little frog swimming in a pot that gradually got a little warmer and warmer and warmer, right? and back then, there was none of those questions. You make tunes, you put them on MySpace, you select your 8 best friends on MySpace. Right. And life is so easier. And I think I'm still here because things have arrived gradually. A new thing's introduced, social media, I learned that. A new social media has appeared, I've learned that. But now, if you come here right now to the gates of Valhalla and you have all those things to do, I have the utmost respect for new upcoming producers. And at the same time, a lot of people are very much younger in the new generation that are born with all those tools. So for them, it's very
I was going to say, right? Man, yeah, I think a lot of the younger generation, it just makes total sense that this is the way things are. Yeah, to them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and there's something beautiful about that too. Because I think for guys like you and me, people who've been doing this for a while, like you said, you sort of have to have a long career doing anything creative. You have to keep adapting, keep sort of learning. And what we do, especially dance music, I talk about this all the time. Dance music is youth culture. At the end of the day, the kids are the only ones who are going to say what's cool in dance music.
Yeah.
And so, you kind of have to keep adapting. You have to make that part of the fun of it. Like what you were saying about how you treat social media now, putting just, instead of feeling like you have to put up all these TikToks or whatever, it's no, let's have some fun with it. This is a song I made that I like. Here's a video of it. I'm going to post it 20 times in a row because that's fun,
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way you got to do it. Yeah.
And I think the one way to stay young is to stay, in love. Just take good care of yourself mentally, physically as well, but mentally you have to take good care of yourself. You have to stay excited about things, and you have to welcome every new thing like it's part of the world. And this is the world I'm in right now. And this is amazing and it's exciting, and every new things. And, bro, I've been DJing for 15 years and I hate to do that, but I have every new wave of technology. I've been fighting a bunch of dinosaurs about it.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's no longer vinyl. It's vinyl per Serato. Yeah, the vinyl sounds better. I don't give a fuck. I got my laptop with 500 tunes in it. I'm not carrying my case of records anymore. And then it's now it's a CD with a time code. It's even more stable than, but vinyl sounds better. Or I like vinyl Serato because of the way it moves. I don't care. This is fantastic. I have my CDs. I don't need a laptop anymore than just CDs. And then it's USB, but you have to play in WAV instead of MP3. Bro, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's new and exciting.
None of it matters.
I rip off that song of YouTube and I play it on my set, and the club will be vibing and no one cares. No one's wait, you're playing a YouTube rip and you're using sync. I'm going to stop dancing now.
Yeah. No.
When does that happen? Never.
No.
And so the way, one thing for me it's important is never turn your back to what's new, what's fresh and everything. Always try to understand it. And know if you don't like it, at least know why you don't like it.
Yeah, exactly. And regardless of whether you like it or not, this is maybe a little of a hippie way to think about it, but the way I've tried it's just I try to say thank you for whatever it is. Whether I like it or not, it's just thanks. This is here's a new thing I get to deal with that I will find a way to make this fun for myself, whether I use it or not.
You have to embrace it.
Yeah.
You have to embrace it. It's like, TikTok is a big, big, big debate right now between producers. Oh, I'm too old for TikTok. And I think, no, you're not. I follow this grandma on TikTok. She's 95 years old. She's the funniest fucking thing you've ever seen. You're not too old for TikTok. You just haven't taken the time to really understand the tool. And it's like, how do I myself use this? And it's most of those things that are popular right now, a new app, a new social media, like TikTok and everything, a new genre of music and everything. A lot of time people don't like it because they haven't really taken the time to really understand it. And a lot of time they're popular because they're good.
Oh, yeah.
There's billions of people using this thing or listening to that song because it's objectively good. You have to find your own reality to it and how that relates to that thing. But something's usually objectively good. It's worth taking a minute to say, okay, maybe I haven't gotten the right approach to this, and I can find my own way. And for me, TikTok was that. First, I was like, I don't understand it. Therefore, let me spend 6 months on it, 2 hours a day to really get it. Now I'm like, this is the most fantastic thing ever. Doesn't mean that I'm going to post every day or every week. Sometimes I don't post for very long times on social media,
Right.
And that's something else I've learned to like be good with myself. I haven't posted on Instagram today. It's fine. I haven't posted on Instagram in a week. It's
that
fine.
Shit doesn't matter, man. Like, of course, of course it'll affect you on the platform or whatever, but like in a bigger sense, that shit does not matter. The people, it makes me so sad to see people kind of like chained to those platforms, like getting worried if they don't post that kind of thing. Because going back to what we were talking about before, the hyper capitalistic side of the business, like, that for me, that's what it is like the people who feel like they have to post all the time and they're failing if they're not. All that is like they're just working for those companies, and it's like we all got into this because we wanted to work for ourselves and like didn't want to have someone telling us, and we wanted to be free.
We're all just a bunch of little products on the shelf. It's like, it's crazy that people take this that seriously. And like you said, we work for those companies. And we work for those labels, we work for those managers. Like we all are like, hell no, we're the centerpiece of the equation. You know what I mean? Like we should make the rules, and it's got a little comrade touch to it. But bro, it's for real. It's like,
dude,
as an artist, you're the centerpiece of it all. It only happens if you make it happen.
I mean, even what you were talking about earlier with all the French DJs getting together and you making the little chat group and all that. I mean, that's a small version of DJs unionizing. You know what I mean? We're talking about sort of like reclaiming our power and our agency and all of that shit. I feel like for you, there was this like stylistic change, like almost a change in your attitude in the last few years of being a little more open, being even something as like outward as like, dyeing your hair crazy colors and dressing differently and all of that. I wanted to ask you, was that a conscious decision? Like, did something precipitate that?
Aging and maybe coming to an age of wisdom, and realizing that, like, again, I'm the centerpiece of the equation, and I can, if I want to do something and if I want to know if it's going to work, the best way is to do it and let the people judge and decide and everything. And so I was like, I've been so scared of, people's opinion on me for the longest time, and I need to kind of open the gates and do whatever I want, because also I need to feel better about myself, And so I went through a pretty rough patch in 2021, I was going through something pretty intense, getting a lot of abuse and shit like that. And when I get out of it, I had this very intense awakening period where I was like, I'm going to be the master of my own destiny, and I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And if that means getting a silly tattoo of Hello Kitty on my stomach, I'll do it because I think it's cute. And I have no regret of one single decisions that I've made ever since, because I stopped really questioning and doing things for others and really doing things for myself, and it all came together, my art flourished and I really blossomed as an artist. My shows became better because I'm more connected to what I do. I think I dress better because I'm having less worries about how people are going to judge me, and I really do what I want to. And my look is, changes all the time because I really follow my moods and everything. It was a form of, empowering myself by awakening, and it's I think I also started to see myself as an artist.
Right.
Embrace the fact that I'm creative rather than just be a DJ producer, right? And it's like, I want to be art, I want to breathe art, and I want to feel, and I want to, have this unique, meaningful experience with life before life's over, because life's going fast, man.
Man.
We just talked about the last 20 years of my life. That's like 2/3 of my life that just went by like that. I remember the first show that I played. I remember the first songs that I made. I remember the first of everything, and they all feel like it was yesterday,
Right.
And so it's going by fast, and I think maybe at one point in my life, I'll probably want to tune out and do something else as well. And so I need to make the best of it. I need to feel happy doing all of that. And I need to feel like I have control over everything. And I don't know, it's a circle of like loving myself more, doing things to make me feel better, which makes me feel better in return, which makes me feel love myself more, which inspires me in return. And it's like, I'm in this very happy spiral for the last 2 years, and it's been the best. I think I'm living the best era of my own life right now. I'm really like the happiest I've ever been. And I'm as tired as I could be some days, as exhausted and burnt out I get on some weekends and some travels and everything. It's like, it's just the best period of my life. And it's crazy that I've waited this long to feel that way. Right. So it's an advice that I want to give people. And a lot of people ask me, like, how do you make it in the industry? How do you make this synth bass? The question that young producers ask you, and I think the question people should ask more often, is how do you reach happiness within yourself? And how are you satisfied with what you do so that you don't care about those questions? Am I making it in the industry right now? Is my mix done good enough? Is my bass thick enough? I don't ask myself those questions because I'm just happy with what I'm making, and I'm happy that I get to make it. And so happiness, there's no value you could put on that, the same way that like I just dilapidated, spent like all my spendings that I was saving for so long, and I'm selling all of my equipment, I'm selling all of my designer clothes, I'm selling everything I own right now just to buy modular synth, because I'm so happy doing it. I'm so happy in my studio plugging cables and patching and jamming and making tunes, and I'm in love with this process again, and that there's no price you can put on that, right? And so,
bro, it makes me happy to hear you say that, man. I'm really glad you're in that place. I think that's really good advice for anybody who needs to hear it. And I'll say too, just like dyeing your hair and putting on a crazy outfit, that's fun, right? Like that's just getting back to, that's like something a kid would do. It's something we would all do as kids, that kind of thing. And I think getting back to that spirit is, as much as we can, is the only way to do this. Where are you at now? I guess that's maybe the way to wrap it up, is like, you've got the album coming out, debut album, which is crazy for how long you've been doing this. So first of all, is there anything we haven't said yet about the album that we should talk about?
I think the music is going to do the talking, and there's going to be several phases this year with that. The album tour, the first album tour is going to be pretty intense. It's going to last until May or something, May, June. And then I want to do a second phase that I'm working on right now, where I want to change what I do on stage. I want to kind of stop doing, the DJ thing where I just plug my USB mixtures together and then go back. I've been really inspired by my homies like What's So Not, by the Glitch Mob. I've met Eddie from the Glitch Mob recently, and it's been a huge inspiring force in my life.
He's such a cool dude, and that fucking wall of synths he has is
it's 10 minutes away from my house. I'm there all the time now. It's great.
It's insane.
It's great.
Insane.
And so I've met those people that have made me rethink how I do now the live show, and I think I'm growing a little tired, and I think that's what's changing, and what to expect is that I don't know where it's going, but I can tell you how I feel about that right now. And I know what I need to work on next that keep making me happy, basically. I feel like if I look at a festival lineup, I see all of us standing in line, one behind each other, all of us with a crazy outfit, and we're all holding a USB stick. And then it's like, it's your turn now, go. And you plug in, you have an hour to go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you remove your key and you go away. And then it's another guy that comes, plugs the same key in the same machine and goes, but I'm better. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Takes his key and goes away. And then the next one comes. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, it's like we're all doing the same. You know, the gear on stage never changes, and like after 20 years of using that gear, I kind of want to switch it up and do different stuff. So that's why I'm doing a lot of. I'm in a research phase right now. I'm researching how I can bring a different experience on stage for people and for myself. I think it's going to involve a lot of hardware, a lot of modular, a lot of cables, a lot of weird stuff. That I'm very deep into the visual world with tattoos. I'm getting my license as a tattoo artist right now.
Oh, amazing.
I'm doing my own like visuals and everything. So I'm trying to blend this as well. I have to bring my visual art to the forefront of what I'm doing. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm in a very intense research phase. I'm not making much music as in Ableton music. I do a lot of modular music at the moment, but I'm taking this break to like learn new things, And so as always with me, I'm always learning something new. I always have a new manic episode regarding something. And so right before I left for this tour, I was making my own like visual modular video, plugging cables and making weird videos. And now I'm looking into VHS tapes to record my visuals on them and mess up some videotape players. Right. So I think, and again, now that I'm really happy with my process, something's changed, right? I have this new apartment where I built my own recording studio. I'm feeling, super creative. I have space. I'm in a very stable situation at home. And so the next step for me is definitely like extending on all those things that I want to do and really cement my vision as an artist as a 360 thing where you can see a piece of art from every angle that I wanted you to. And you still have all that room to view it from above in the globality and decide how you feel regarding to it. And I think I'm going to stay on the album kind of a way of doing things as well, because you present a larger vision and a meaningful message. And the creative process was the most stressful and scary, but also the most rewarding and intense. And so I think there's going to be a big shift for me in my career from now, where I'm going to work making albums a lot more. Like someone that I met recently that I've become very close to, and that's been, I don't even think they realize, those people that are in my life, how much of a driving force they are to mine and how much they inspire me. Watson Not has been a crazy inspiring force for me. And he started to talk to me about his new live show months ago, and I did Christmas with him in Australia. He invited me to do Christmas with his family because I was alone in my hotel room, and he showed me pictures of the live show that he was going to do. And I was like, this is insane. New album, the live shows that goes with it and everything. Like, this is someone that really took his vision as far as he allows himself to feel and even beyond. And that brings him back so much, happiness and inspiration. And so I think I'm going to switch toward that model of respecting myself and making albums and probably trying to build a live show, making the live experience more meaningful. And also I'll still be doing DJ sets, obviously, because I love being a DJ, but I want to develop on all that. But yeah, I think I'm already starting to think about the next album already. It's in my head. I'm like, what's next now,
But that's fun, man. That's great. Like, again, I think that shows you're on the right track if you're already excited to do this whole stressful thing again, right?
Yeah. I'm so ready for that. It's like, I've learned so much about myself and how much I can manage the most stressful situation and adversity a lot better than I thought.
I mean, that's a beautiful thing to learn, man. That's that takes some people a lifetime to learn. And I mean, you were talking about, the years are going so fast, and it'll all be over for us at some point. Do you think about the idea of legacy? Do you care about the idea of legacy? Like, what do you? And in a bigger sense, just because I've been thinking about this lately, like, are you spiritual about any of that shit? Like, do you think anything happens at the end?
More than anything lately, at least for the legacy question, I believe in it more than anything. And that's been really what's been on my mind and the whole creative process around the album. And that's why the album is called Heritage. Actually, legacy was on the title list, to be full with you. Oh, wow. It's like, what do I leave behind? Is it going to be a bunch of singles and Instagram posts of me wiggling my arms? And it's like, what what's meaningful? What am I going to leave behind? If tomorrow the internet crashes and there's no electricity, what have I done that I can hold in my hands?
Right.
So that's a question that stays with me a lot. And I think, again, it's part of getting older and getting wiser and accepting myself a lot more. It's like, how can you what is it that you've loved and that you will love again and that you're so proud of that you want to be like, this stays behind and this I look back in 20 years and was like, wow, this was an incredible moment and I'm still proud of it. So I think about legacy a lot. And regarding the afterlife, not really. I'm more of an atheist, in terms of that question. It's also a driving force for me. It's like I don't rely on like, oh, I'll be happy after death. I'll be dead.
Yeah, I
gotta make the best of it right now, And I'm trying to live every day as the fullest, even if that means doing absolutely nothing and resting because it's good for myself. It's good for my mental health. But I believe in life. I really believe in life. I believe in the incredible depth and beauty of one's path and the journey that we embark on, and like the incredible beauty behind the sense of reward and the sense of self-love and acceptance. And that's my journey. And it's very spiritual in itself, because I think art is a very spiritual thing, this wow moment and the emotions are like this. It's otherworldly. It's crazy. And I really give thanks for that a lot. And I think I'm on my own spiritual journey enough that I don't need to rely on like any scriptures again about it,
Yeah. I know exactly what you're saying. And I'm pretty similar in the way that I think about things. And I think what you just said kind of brought everything we've been talking about full circle, because that's, the beauty of someone's path and the fact that your path, nobody else in the entire history of the world has ever or will ever have your path. And that all of us can say that. Like that's the same as you going to university and being frustrated that you can't play the piano as well as somebody else, and then later realizing that it wasn't about that at all, right? And that it's
was
more
never
just
about
your brain, the fact that nobody else sees music the way you see it, nobody else has had the same experiences, the same history with it as you, and that's all you ever needed. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think the journey is so much important, so much more than destination, because I still don't know where it's going to end. So I don't, rather than stressing about that, I'm asking myself if I'm having a good time on the road right now, the journey there.
Well, that's all it is, right? There is no, at the end of the day, there is no destination, right? It's all a road.
No. And I think when you're a creator, there is no end in it, because I think you create because it's your way to become immortal, right? I think a lot of us are trying to cheat death by creating those things that will stay after us and that will survive after us, And so there is no end if you create something that's meaningful. It's forever.
That's absolutely right. You're making me think about sampling now, where, sometimes a song that was not a hit at all, a song almost no one heard, 50 years later, somebody samples it. And all of a sudden, millions of people heard this thing that was made in obscurity. The person maybe died in obscurity, but then something they made is affecting the world. And, will that happen? You never know. But it's like, it's kind of a comforting thing to be like, oh, we're all just kind of participating in this thing,
Exactly.
Man.
Exactly. And that's kind of like where I'm at right now. Beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing, man. That feels like a pretty good place to wrap it up. Is anything else on your mind? Anything else we didn't talk about?
We've talked about so much right now. It's pretty crazy,
This was great, man. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, I'm having a great time. I've been very scared of interviews, because a lot of those questions are very often very bland, very sterile, and it's like, I don't want. You could Google the answer to that.
Yeah.
But you don't really often, it's not often that I get to sit down and talk about the journey. And to me, again, that's something very important. So, I'm happy we got to talk about everything from current to past to future. And I'm very excited to let the album do the rest of the talk for me now, and let this thing that I worked on really believe into, show itself to the world, and what happens after that, it's beyond me,
That's right.
I'm ready to take that seat. I'm ready to take the back seat and let people like it, let people hate it. I'm ready for everything,
That's the best, man. That's the best place to be in. I'm very excited to hear the album, man, and I'm I'm just happy that you're in a great place, that you're feeling good, and that you're still here doing it, man. And thank you for doing this too, because I know you don't do a lot of these.
Yeah. Thanks you for having me, man. It's a real pleasure.
It's kind of late there, huh?
It's probably late, yeah. My computer's not even on.
Yeah, perfect.
French time.
It doesn't matter, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's 11:10. We've been talking for an hour and 40 minutes now. That's pretty good.
We've been going, man.
I like it. I like that. Yeah, I could keep going, you know.
Yeah, no, I could. We'll save it for part 2, for album 2, whatever it is.
Super done.
Hell yeah.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you, man.
And talk to you very soon.
Take care, dude.
Take care.
Peace,
Bye.
man. Bye.